Welcome back, pet parent. Today's topic is going to be a little difficult for me. I originally didn't expect it to be, but the more and more I've thought about it and I've tried to plan this episode over and over again, I keep just tearing up the pieces of paper I'm writing on and telling myself I'm not going to do it. And then something happened that made me say, you know what, I'm just going to do it anyway. So, one of the things that I believe is that our pets come into our lives for a reason. Sometimes that reason is that they are here to teach us. Sometimes that reason is that we are to help them. And sometimes I think it's a little bit of both. And for me, I have now lost 8 pets in my life. And that may sound like a lot to some people. That may sound like not many to others. Every single time it's hard and I'm already tearing up. So please forgive me, especially if you're watching the video, because I tend to get really red and splotchy. I'm already getting splotchy on my chest when I get emotional. So my cat, Romeo, I'm going to kind of start at the end and we'll go back to the beginning. My cat, Romeo, I had to let him go. I had to make the decision, which is never easy. And we'll talk a little bit about that as well. Grief isn't easy. And I think in some cases, we start to grieve before they're even gone, which was definitely the case for me with Romeo. But the reason that I decided to go ahead and do this episode, even though it is so intensely emotional for me, and I'm not even sure I want to do it, but at the same time, I know I want to do it, and I know that makes no sense, but I'm a Libra, so here we are. I had an animal communication session with Karen Dindy Smith. So she was on the podcast not too long ago because she did a communication session with my cat Romeo earlier in the year. And then when she found out that he passed away, I happened to have seen her in person and let her know that he had passed away just like a couple of weeks prior. And he made such an impact on her that she was like, we need to do another session. So we did. And in that session, one of the things she told me is that I am supposed to be sharing this, that this is part of not only my journey, but your journey as someone listening to this, regardless of when you're listening to this, whether you're listening to it right when the episode comes out, or you happen to have found me at some later date and you're going back through episodes, which, by the way, is how I binge podcast. I find something that has been established and I'm like, oh my gosh, where has this been my whole life? And I start from the beginning and like binge the whole thing. So I'm right there with you if that's what you're doing. And it's part of my journey. It's part of your journey. And I believe it was part of his journey as well, that I share all of this with you and not knowing what part of this may resonate with you. So I'm going to try to hit on as many things as possible. Even if they don't seem super important to me, they may be very important to you. Really quickly, before we get into all of that, I do want to introduce myself. If this happens to be the first time you are seeing or hearing me, my name is Jessica. I am dual certified in nutrition for canines. One of those also has a feline nutrition certification in it as well. I'm also a holistic pet health coach. Obviously the host of this podcast. For quite a while, I was a positive reinforcement dog trainer. So my passion is to help educate, help reduce the learning curve for you as a pet parent, because I felt mine was huge. And I do that by looking at the whole animal as much as possible. I believe that's what holistic means. Even though it's spelled with just an H, I think it should be a WH. So if that at all interests you, I do hope you consider following the podcast, following me on social media, especially Instagram. That's where I tend to hang out most. Also TikTok, all of the things. I hope that at some point in time, I say something or one of my guests says something that resonates with you and leads you down a path that puts you and your pets in a better quality of life. That's my only hope. Whether you want to work with me one-on-one or not, currently, as I'm recording this, I am still taking one-on-one consultations. So that's something as well. So let's get back to Romeo. Karen Dindy Smith did tell me very early on in our session that she didn't even know that I was on the fence about doing this episode. It was on my list, in my heart, and very early on, she said, you are supposed to be telling this story. And that, I've sat with that for about a week, and I said, okay, let me do this. Let me tell this story. So Romeo was so much more special than I originally gave him credit for. When I first met him, he kind of joined a feral cat colony that I was caring for at my home when I was living in Norfolk, Virginia. I had a feral cat colony that I fed, that I did TNR with, that lived in the neighborhood but congregated at my home. I feel like my home was their home base. And they were all black, literally every last one of them, which was so fun and also kind of weirdly interesting in the lack of genetic diversity in this particular colony. So Romeo was not originally part of this colony, but he did end up becoming part of the colony, and he actually lived outside for a number of years. He was already around 2 years old, is what they told me when I trapped him to be neutered, and re-released him back into the colony. It wasn't until I met my now husband, who, when we decided to go take the next step and I moved in with him, it was like 30 some miles away that he lived from me. So I trapped who was left in my colony at that point in time and actually moved them to a new city with me, because I take that responsibility very seriously. And so Romeo came with me, and it was at this point in time, because I imagine it is very infrequent that somebody actually does this. I did a lot of research on how to properly move a feral cat colony. It was a lot of work. It was a lot of preparation. And I actually had to keep them confined for about 2 weeks. And in this period of time where I had really large crates, multiple, so there was only like 2 or 3-ish cats per crate. It was during this time that I realized how much of a love bug he really was. And that even though he had those like feral tendencies, he was also on the fence with like, but I really kind of want you to pet me and cuddle me. It was a really interesting dynamic that I hadn't really experienced before in a feral cat, or what I deemed to be a feral cat. So when my husband and I moved to San Diego, we already knew, from Virginia to California, many years ago, we already knew it was a given that whoever was left in my feral cat colony was coming with us as well. Well, it just so happened at the time there were only 2 cats left. And because there were only 2 cats left, King Tut and Romeo, I said, you know what? I'm just going to do it. They're going to come inside with the rest of my cats, which could have turned out absolutely horribly, but did turn out really, really beautifully. So Romeo settled in so nicely. I will say it took a couple of years until it was just like, I didn't even really think about him being a feral cat anymore, or being a cat that lived outdoors, outside of the fact that he had an ear tip because he was neutered as part of a feral colony. So, interestingly, a few more years go by. He's settled in really well. Tut settled in really well. And one of my other cats, the cat Sammy, who was definitely like the leader of this group, passed away. And it wasn't long after that Romeo started spraying in my home. So there was a huge learning curve with that. Many nights I spent on the floor crying, cleaning up so much, puppy pads everywhere. A lot of people probably would have given up on him. I can't deny that. I think a lot of people probably would have given up on him. So I couldn't. I just couldn't. Later on, after King Tut passed away, is really when the bond that Romeo and I had really started to develop. And it was not without its issues. I will say more than one time Romeo sprayed me. I would be sitting on the ground and he would literally back up to me and spray me. So there was but at the same time, I called him my Sour Patch Kid because he was so sweet, but also he had this side of him where he was mean to one of my cats. I think I kind of because she's still here, Sissy's still here with me. I almost kind of tease her that they were so alike, that they just butted heads constantly, and I truly believe that's the case. And of course, the spraying issue. But he taught me so much. And one of the things, and I actually said this on the podcast with Karen Dundee Smith, one of the things that I have heard in different places, and it resonates so much with me that I kind of combined it all together. I believe that our dogs are here to teach us unconditional love. And I believe that our cats are our spiritual protectors and guides. And you don't have to be woo-woo to believe that, though I think it helps. And I'm definitely on the woo-woo side. I am spiritual and believe that I believe in the earth. I believe in nature. I believe that science gives us the ecosystem to try to explain spirituality and how we and other species connect in nature, how the earth and the moon and the sun and the stars, and how it, like, I believe in science, and I believe that science actually explains spirituality. Just my belief, you don't have to believe that. But with Romeo, I believe that he was the most powerful spiritual guide that I've had in my life. And I also believe that I was supposed to be helping him. And I hope I did that. He had medical issues at the end. He had resorptive disease for many years, and we managed that with getting his teeth cleaned every 6 months. Up until recently when the vet said, he's doing great, let's go a year. We went a year and he wound up with 17 teeth being extracted because it just was out of control. I've talked about that a lot. The fact that the veterinarian's office was not willing to give me anything more than gabapentin for pain, even though gabapentin doesn't work for pain. I used CBD with added THC and managed his pain. So with resorptive disease, the immune system is basically attacking the enamel of the teeth, and it can be very painful because when it does that, it can start to expose the nerves in the teeth. And so obviously that can be very painful. So it isn't something that I took lightly, and made sure that so he was getting his blood work done regularly. He was getting his teeth cleaned regularly. We had to have the blood work done for that. And he also developed hyperthyroidism, which to me was an indication that, okay, things, the body isn't handling things as well as it once would. Interestingly, Sissy also has hyperthyroidism, but that's another story, I think, on hyperthyroid. I'm actually getting ready to take a course with Rita Hogan on hyperthyroidism in cats and herbal remedies and different things like that. So I'll hopefully follow up more on hyperthyroidism specifically. We don't need to necessarily go into that in this podcast, but I did a whole podcast with the two crazy cat ladies on hyperthyroid cats as well. So that's available on the podcast. What Romeo always taught me was to slow down and be more present. And I don't think I appreciated that as much as I should have in the moment when I had him. The many years, for many years, I didn't understand or appreciate that. It was more in the last couple of years of his life that I started to appreciate that is one of the things he was here to teach me. Because the more present I was with him, the calmer he was. it was a very interesting relationship and dynamic that I think some cat parents out there, cat moms, cat dads, cat owners, whatever you want to call yourself. I don't really like the word owner, but that is what it is. Whatever you want to call yourself. I think some of us very much appreciate our cats in ways that society doesn't expect us to appreciate them. Like, yes, they're wonderful. They provide us companionship. They're another living being in the house. They give us responsibility, which can be really beneficial, especially when we are having our own mental health issues. Having that responsibility and that sense of responsibility can help keep us afloat, even sometimes help pull us out of it. But to have a more spiritual connection with your pets is something that there are definitely people out there that are talking about it, but I don't think it's talked about nearly enough. And I can't say that I am an expert on this topic in any way, shape, or form, which is why I bring other people on to talk to you about it. Like Karen Dindy Smith, Michelle Thomas is going to be coming on the podcast shortly as well. And I know I've had other animal communicators on in the past. It's definitely something that you have to be ready to hear. Otherwise, it's not going to make a whole lot of sense to you. And with Romeo, I lost my train of thought. Thank you. She did. And with Romeo, I feel like I got more of like a crash course. And like, Jessica, you need to understand that there's so much more than just the responsibility and the companionship and everything that you've always loved about having pets and having cats specifically. Like, there is a much more spiritual component to coexisting with felines. I definitely noted, like, he was always the one, if I would just try to chill out and meditate, if I just had music on and didn't want to, just wanted to sit there and chill out, he was the one that would always come to me, that would sit by me, that would engage in those times. And he definitely wanted more of that. He was encouraging me to be more present with him, open, like this like open exchange of energy. Not I learned with him a number of years ago not to talk to my cats, not to talk to my pets, even though I do like it's there's a difference in talking to them and talking with them. And I think the words we choose to use can be really, really important. So I'm not speaking at him. I am engaging in a conversation, even if I can't audibly hear him speak to me. I am even though I am using my voice and audibly speaking to him, my intentions energetically are more what I am trying to put out to him. And I know this is going to sound so strange to some people, try to feel back the energy he's giving back to me, which I will be the first to admit I am not great at. Like it is a practice. I am trying to engage in this exchange of energy and understand my pets better with, in that exchange of energy. So maybe that is what you needed to hear. I don't know. It was really interesting because earlier this year he had the 17 teeth pulled, which was actually quite traumatic because the vet would not give me anything for pain other than gabapentin. And I know that that's not, it doesn't work for pain. It works to sedate the cat or the dog, whoever you're giving it to. So I already had, I onboarded CBD, added THC to that, and we were able to get through. My other veterinarian who does the house calls, helped me as much as she could, getting me what she was able to get to me and kind of guiding me through, helping him, getting him various foods because it was so hard to get him to eat. Obviously, he had a lot of pain in his mouth. That was a very traumatic experience. And at that time, his blood work was great. March, we had his blood work done. His blood work was great. The meds we were giving him for his thyroid condition everything was working, everything was wonderful. Everything was great. And then a few months later, he broke his leg. He fractured his leg. And that was another traumatic experience for me, more so than him, because I was giving him the CBD and the THC, which was working for him, which was great. I couldn't find a veterinarian to x-ray his leg. Isn't that insane? The regular vet said so my house call vet doesn't have the equipment, the machinery, the x-ray machines. So she said, well, take him to the clinic that she works out of sometimes, who did his dental cleaning and all the things. I called them to schedule the appointment. Oh, we can't do that because yes, we could take the x-ray, but he's likely going to need, they just assumed that he was going to need surgery. And they were like, well, we can't do the surgery. So there's no point. We're not even going to let you come in and do the x-ray. Called the emergency vet. Same thing. Nope, we're not going to do the x-ray because we don't have anybody here to do the surgery. Okay, we don't even know that it's going to require there's just an assumption. They're making assumptions. It was very frustrating. Finally, my house call vet found a mobile surgeon who happens to have a home base. It's not really even, it's set up as an office, but it's not really even supposed to be working as like a vet clinic, but they have an x-ray machine there. And it's a traveling surgeon. I think two, I believe, that work together. And so they got me in to go to their home base where they have the x-ray machine. There was a lot of mix-ups there as well. They had an emergency surgery to go to. I ended up getting his leg x-rayed there, even though he kind of didn't want to, but he ended up saying he was glad he did, because we found that yes, it was in fact fractured. And as soon as he pulled it up on the screen, as soon as he pulled the x-ray up on his iPad, I looked at it and I stepped back and I just like this, I'm gonna cry again. I put my hand over my mouth and I said, oh my God, it's osteosarcoma. And he looked at it and he just kept explaining things. And I said, it's osteosarcoma. And he was like, yes, it's osteosarcoma. So I think he was kind of scared to tell me that it was cancer. He was all around all these things we could do. What do you want to do? We could do this. We could do that. And I could tell he was trying to get to the point where he was going to tell me that it's cancer. He didn't want to give me that news. So he was kind of like, this is going to be the last thing I tell you. I don't want to tell you. And so I said it. And yeah, so he had osteosarcoma, which is rare in cats. It's very rare in cats. It's also very painful. So I was really glad to have the CBD and THC already onboarded. I increased it, making him more comfortable. And I just said, as long as he has a quality of life, granted, his leg is broken, but he's getting around okay. He has figured out how to manage, and we have the pain, his pain is managed as well. My regular house call vet obviously was, let anything you need. If you need more pain met, please let me know. I'll get you whatever you need, which was wonderful. But the CBD and THC was enough, and I could tell that it was enough because there were some times that he thought he was Superman. So after about a week, I had a conversation with him and I said, just tell me, let me know, be as obvious as you possibly can, so I don't have any doubts in my mind whatsoever. Let me know when you're ready. And the very next morning, he completely changed. His demeanor changed. He was not coming out to greet me anymore. He was staying in his crate, which the door stays open too. It's not like I lock him in a crate or anything. That's just it's like a little cave that he really loved to be in. He wasn't coming out other than to eat. Sometimes I would actually put his food in there. He was still eating, but he wasn't eating as much. Yeah, it was just, I knew immediately. And I told him, I said, I see your change and I just want to make sure that it's not a fluke. So if it's still like this tomorrow, I understand. And it was still like that the next day. and the next day because I was still having a hard time with it. And so I called and I made the appointment for the upcoming weekend. So I still had quite a few days with him. I talked to him a lot. I tried to talk with him. I tried to do things that I thought he would enjoy. I took him outside. He actually did not enjoy being outside that much. I brought him back in, probably gave him a little bit too much THC. He thought he was Superman, but I make sure he was comfortable. And when I spoke to Karen Dindy Smith last week, so it was about 6 weeks after he passed that I talked to her. I was a blubbering mess the whole time I was crying. I actually wasn't expecting to, because I felt really excited to talk to her and to connect with him and see like that he was okay and know that I made the right decision and all of the things. And yeah, it just turned out to be very, very emotional, and I was definitely crying a lot. But she started out by saying, "You are supposed to be sharing this. You are supposed to be, this is part of your journey. You are supposed to be sharing this experience. So this is what I'm doing." She said that she didn't feel any pain, which made her feel like he was not feeling any pain, and that he wanted to continue to energetically watch over me and the other cats and to invite him in. And just there were a lot of confirmations, and it was unexpected. Neither of us expected that to be his time, but I think he was okay, and I think he was ready, and I believe that everything happened the way it was supposed to happen, and it was all part of both of our journeys. Yeah, I'm getting emotional again. So that's kind of really a synopsis of my story with Romeo. If there are any parts of this that really resonate with you that maybe you want to hear more about, I'd love to get an expert on to talk to you more about it, because I don't feel like, especially with like the woo woo stuff, I don't feel like I'm an expert at all, but I feel like this is a very woo woo situation that I'm bringing to you. And I think that, again, I do believe science explains spirituality in many ways. And because I am more trained as a scientist, but my heart is guided more spiritually. And so I have this like duality that I want to bring to you. I think maybe even to make you feel more comfortable in having that duality in yourself and understanding that both is okay, and we can bring both together. And one of the things that, try not to cry again, one of the things that Romeo was here to, I believe, teach me, and that I'm still working on, and I think that I am supposed to be connecting with him energetically to continue to work on this, is speaking my truth. And I think that's probably hard for a lot of people to hear, because I've had this podcast for so long now, for 3 years now, that it's like, of course, you talk all the time. What do you mean, speak your truth? I say so many things, and I try to educate and enlighten so many people, specifically around, more holistically caring for their pets, the nutrition of our pets. So it seems like, what are you talking about? But opening up my throat chakra and speaking more authentically, I think this may be like one of the first times that I'm supposed to be doing that. So I don't want to get any more emotional. So I think I'm going to end the episode on that note. And please do reach out to me, especially on Instagram or TikTok. Instagram is kind of my like home base. If there is more of a deep dive that you would want into any of these subjects, so that I can find an expert to come on and talk to you about it. And with that, I will talk to you next week.